very, very good. And it looks like we're going to hold on relatively easily all the way around. So that's coming from the #1 pollster out there. Amazing stuff. And it's just going to get you all the more fired up when you watch this movie.
That's right. Well, welcome to everyone who is watching on Rumble or YouTube right now. It's an honor to be with you on this Thursday night. We are here to celebrate a very important special movie from Turley Productions and Courageous Patriot Media that's available right now at the link if you're watching on YouTube in the description. And we have some special news that we're going to talk about as well. So Dr. Steve, welcome to everybody here. It's good to see
the
you.
live stream. Yes. Oh yes, we've had a private conversation before we went live. Everybody here who's privy to that private conversation are very pumped up and very, very excited about some new data that's come out for the midterms. Maybe I'll have to release it to them as well. We'll have to see.
Well, if you would like to get in on this private conversation that we're having over here on Zoom, we are taking questions from supporters who have made this movie possible, who are a part of our Locals channel. So go ahead and join our Locals channel by going to the returnoftheamericanpatriot.com or drsteveturley.locals.com. So, Steve, it's not just you and I here tonight. We have some amazing people behind the scenes to talk about what's going on in Pennsylvania. Should I bring them in?
Oh, absolutely. These are the stars. I took a back seat on this documentary. These are the real stars who made this movie possible.
Yes. So first of all, I'd like to bring in our executive producer, Mr. Ralph Cochran. He has clap. Hello.
Yeah. One hand clap. One hand clap.
Hey, Ralph. Good to see you.
Hello. Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone.
Yes, good to have you all with us. Ralph was a lot of the brains behind this movie. And for those of you that may have been with us in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, you'll know how attacked this movie was. Leftists did not want us to watch this movie, and all 8 protesters that showed up with their canes and their crafts really tried to stop it. So,
their arts and crafts posters. That's right.
Yes. So if you're just now joining us, welcome everyone. We've got lots to talk about what's going on in Pennsylvania, but the best news of the night is that The Return of the American Patriot is now available to watch right now. It's yours forever. If you click that link in the description on YouTube, or you go to thereturnoftheamericanpatriot.com. So let me bring in the other 2 brains behind this movie. Joshua Williams. I'll bring him on. He's the director of this movie. And y'all, he's an award-winning director. We are so honored to have him as a part of our team, who is both directed and helped edit this movie. He was the brains behind all of that. So thank you, Josh. For those of you that watched When the Dust Clears, that movie that we shared with you for 9/11, the 21st anniversary, he created that entire movie. If you haven't seen it, go watch it on our Locals channel, Supporters on Locals. If you haven't watched it, go check it out. So hello, Josh.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Good to be with you. Finally, Conrad Franz is with us. He is the writer of The Return of the American Patriot, The Rise of Pennsylvania. And he took a lot of what Dr. Steve has talked about for years on our channel and turned it into script form. So everybody, welcome Conrad. Hello.
Thank you. Good to be here. Excited.
Yes. So
that is Conrad's excited voice, just so you know. That's probably the most excited I've ever heard him. Right?
Yes. Well, it's an honor to be here, the whole team together, both on YouTube, we're streaming, Rumble, and in here for our supporters on Zoom. So if you want to be a supporter and ask us a question, we'll get into that in just a bit. You can click on the link in the description on Rumble and YouTube, and you can become a supporter and join us here on Zoom. So let's talk a little bit about why this movie is important. Some people might look at it and see that it's the rise of Pennsylvania. We just went through and saw all these people that are from all across the world why is it so important that people watch this movie if they're not from Pennsylvania? Let's talk about the big updates and what's going on there. So, Ralph, you're executive producer. You kind of worked with Steve on creating this idea. Why Pennsylvania?
Yeah, well, I mean, a big part of it is, I think that it's the local community, which I live in, and Steve doesn't live too far from. And so when all the craziness went down with COVID, we just became very self-aware that we can't just think of ourselves on a national and global level. And as you know, Steve gets on every day and does these videos, and we have a whole team behind him and always doing all these different events. And we're kind of always, our mind up to that point was always in the national, global level, which is, because we're looking at geopolitical events and analyzing them through this national populist lens, et cetera. And then when we got hit and we saw what happened with Trump, we saw the outcomes of, just the craziness going into the January before the inauguration. We realized it was kind of lonely out there, and we felt alone too. Who here felt alone? Put it in the chat if you felt alone. I felt alone, because I think that was a big thing. Like, is this that I remember Steve and Hannah and I getting on the phone is like, we were asking this question, what should we do? And as we kind of pondered that, it became really important to us to just like, okay, well, what is the Lord put before us? The resources and the talents and the gifts, and how can we step up in this moment and serve our audience, serve you? And that was really literally the conversation, because the only other choice was for us to turn off the camera and go in the basement and crawl up in a ball and cry and go despair and eat Cheetos and drink lots of beer. And we're not going to do that. And we're courageous patriots. That's what we are, and that's what we're going to stand up and move forward. And so for us, we recognized, looking around us, and I had been plugged into some local groups that were just starting back in right after the election, November, December. They were asked what to do, and there's local groups in Pennsylvania. And little did I know at the time, I was just encouraged. I had Steve kind of speak to them through Zoom, and we would just talk about what was going on and encourage them. And they were mobilizing various different groups around what was happening with the elections, what was happening with the just what was going to happen with the overall impact of COVID, and the businesses being shut down, and all the other things with the mask and vaccine, all that stuff. And so these people were mobilizing, seeing how our tyrannical governor and even some of the locals, the rhinos in the area, weren't doing anything. They were ignoring everyone. And it made us feel more alone. And then we realized, like, we have this voice, we need to speak up. And I just remember reflecting on that come January of this year, because what happened was we had hired some team members last summer, and two in particular. Hannah was already on board, but Conrad and Josh. And Josh we found him working in a cold storage warehouse and packing food, but he had this incredible gifts and talents that come out of this movie background from film school.
He was being raised by wolves too, I believe.
That's right.
The way you said it, we were exploring.
Are we going to do a new movie?
Little Josh.
That's our next movie.
He was so cold.
We'll do origin stories on each of the people. That's our next movie.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just had to.
Steve, go back in your.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'll go back to my notes here. Yeah.
Go research a video. So what happened from there is that I recognized our team and the resources we had and the talents, and I knew these guys are really gifted, and you're going to hear from them in just a moment. Josh is gifted at directing movies and producing. He had that amazing film 9/11 that you can all watch, and if you're part of the locals membership now we have in there, and where you can watch the movie too. But he has this movie, that 9-minute short that won all these awards. And then I also knew Conrad was this amazing, skilled writer, and not only just a writer, he can think. And I remember when Steve was first talking to him, I was like, man, he gets it. He understands this whole nationalist populist movement globally, not just here in the U.S. and the implications at a very young age. And so I said, we need to come up with something. I was talking to Steve, we need to come up with something to get these guys busy. Sorry, I call you kids, but you are. You're young. You're half our age. And so so I just said, let's do a movie. And I had also become good friends with Senator Doug Mastriano way back, 2 years ago. He was on our becoming on our show a lot. And so from there, the bottom line was like that we ended up just recognizing that we had Mastriano, we had these local groups, that these local leaders that were rising up. I said we need to capture that story as an inspiration for everyone around the globe, because every time I would bring on these people we would have events throughout the year leading up to that, and we would bring some of these people on as guests, and people like, I need our own local patriot newspaper. And so like when we bring them on as a guest, and they would go crazy and like, we need to do that here. Who are these people? Or I need my own patriot group in my own area that's going to represent my values and get together, not just the local Republicans, which is good, but a lot of them were kind of just like, ooh, this is like, we're not going to touch these things. And these people were after it. They weren't, with the school boards. One of these groups had like over 50 people got elected into school boards because of this one group, Free PA. And so we knew these people. I was friends with them. I was in their community. And so that's where the movie came from, is just capturing what was going on in the local community, because that's the answer. That's the answer, is if we can capture back our local communities and understand what we're actually free men, and how we can walk as free men, free and demonstrate our ability to speak in the darkness and take action. Then from there, we can have the impact we can overall nationally, but we need to let you know that this is going on locally as an inspiration. So that's a long answer, but I think it's worth sharing. That's why we're doing this kind of behind the scenes. So yeah, and Hannah, that might be more than what you wanted to me to answer, but that's kind of the backdrop from how I got to the point of coming up with the idea of doing the movie. And then the cool part was kind of thing, I asked Doug for a favor. I said, hey, my daughter's high school. I said, would you come on a field trip and do a tour of the Gettysburg battlefield? He's an expert at giving tours. He's a historian. He's got his PhD and master's in history and various other degrees. And so he did a tour of the Gettysburg battlefield for my kids' high school. And Josh and I recorded it, and Conrad wrote up a bunch of interview questions, and I asked the questions, and that's how we got the thing you'll see on the movie tonight is me, a little round top and different parts of the battlefield, asking Doug these questions about Pennsylvania and its history. So that's the origin of the movie.
Well, thank you, Ralph, and welcome to everyone who's joined on YouTube or Rumble, or here our supporters that are with us on Zoom. So we do have a little bit of news that's coming out of Pennsylvania regarding Mastriano, who is featured in our movie. There have been some recent polls, and I want to throw it to Steve real quick and talk about this. Why Mastriano in the movie, and what is your take on this news that's coming out about the polls? I mean, it's kind of expected. We knew he was doing well if you saw the energy anytime we're around him. But these new polls are really promising. So could you share with us a bit about that?
Well, sure. So Doug Mastriano, like Pennsylvania itself, is just a microcosm of this larger macrocosmic paradigm shift, where it was more or less first identified back in 2010 with Doug Schoen and Scott Rasmussen's book Mad as Hell, which detailed the polling surrounding the rising Tea Party movement that went on to win 63 seats in the House and pick up, if I remember, 5 or 7 in the Senate. And what they found is that the paradigm shift was that there was a very noticeable realignment or recalibration of the electorate, where the partisan divide was no longer Republican versus Democrat or conservative versus liberal, left versus right. A new partisan divide was really developing, and they would see it across the board. They would see it on the right, on the left. They'd see it among Republicans and Democrats. You name it, Latinos, white working class, you name it. They were seeing the same thing. And that divide was a sense that our political leaders have become increasingly aloof and completely removed from the concerns and the interests and the values that we have, again, like echoing at what Ralph said, at local levels. there is a technical term for this process. It's known as deterritorialization. So Conrad and I get into all these kind of interesting theoretical dynamics that are out there. But the gist of it is that in a globalist society, politics gets disembedded, it gets dislodged from local participation, and it gets recalibrated inevitably around a managerial, technocratic, permanent political elite. And so what's happened is that permanent political elite, and we notice this again starting back in 2010, they not only began ignoring our concerns. We'd say we'd want the border shut, and they'd say, oh, sure, no problem, like Bush did for 8 years, but never did anything about it. We'd say we want our manufacturing industrial jobs returned home. Oh, sure. But then they would never do anything about it. We want you to protect and celebrate our traditions and our customs. Go, oh, yeah, sure. I say Merry Christmas, blah, blah. But they never ever do anything about it. They talked pro-life, but then they would put in more or less pro-abortionist judges and all this sort of stuff. There was definitely a divide that was opening up between the people and the political class. But increasingly, they found that the political class wasn't just aloof to their concerns. They actually began to openly disdain them and mock them and despise them and ridicule them. And that's what led to 2016. And so we had a second study that came out just a couple of years later called Nationalist Populism. And it was a British study. And they echoed exactly what Schoen and Rasmussen found back in 2010. And so there is this massive divide that's opened up between the people and the political class. And the political class has been antagonistic towards our values and our interests and concerns. But now they have figured out that this is the new divide, and that there is a massive populist wave, a coalition, a recalibrated political coalition of the people, regardless of party. We've had massive defections of people away from the Democrats over to the Republican Party, but not even to the Republicans. It's not from McConnell, right? It's not for Mittens Romney. It was for Trump. Trump was a third-party candidate who got a major party nomination. So they're more Trumpians, right? And again, what made Trump so awesome for them? Because he was the only one that was pointing the finger right back at the permanent political class. You're the problem. You're the problem. I don't care what, Ted Cruz is saying or Rand Paul is saying about this issue or that issue. No, nothing matters until we drain the swamp. Nothing matters until we crush this permanent political class and dismantle the deep state and the like. And the moment our permanent political class realized that's the new paradigm shift, they immediately are now trying to demonize us. They're trying to deflect the rage and the resentment that so many have against them onto somebody else, now onto the ultra MAGA movement, as we saw from Emperor Palpatine Biden, his blood red speech a couple of weeks back. So what Mastriano and what Pennsylvania really represent in microcosmic form is this massive shift, because you're not going to find a state with more rhino leadership right now than Pennsylvania. It is nauseating. I've seen it firsthand. Ralph could tell you firsthand. Josh could tell you firsthand. I have seen these rhino Republican, and I prefer Diablo, Democrat and all but label, right? And then throw an O in there somewhere. These Diablos, these rhinos who are no different than Democrats. It's just a different corporation. Okay. It's the same business. It's just it's Twitter and it's Facebook. But in the end, they're both Silicon Valley institutions. That's what these guys are. So Doug Mastriano wins the gubernatorial nomination in a total blowout, by the way. It's a very crowded field. He wins nearly 50% of the vote. And what do you see immediately? All the top-ranking Republicans, including the Senate president, was it Jake Corman? All the top-ranking Republicans turn around and endorse the Democrat challenger, Josh Shapiro. It's that disgusting. And so we felt that this movie it presented a drama that's a microcosm that's playing out at the level of the Mitch McConnell, or playing out the level of the McCainite Arizona Republican, and on and on and on. And so that's what made, I think, this movie so pertinent to everyone in our country, and indeed, I think around the world, with the growing populism that we're seeing, especially in Canada now with their brand new conservative leader there.
Absolutely. Well, tonight is a celebration of that. It's more than a movie premiere. It's a celebration of the fall of globalism, and how that's reflected in the story that Conrad and Josh have so eloquently put together. So I'd love to chat with them, bring them on here. For those of you that are just joining us, my name's Hannah. I'm from Dr. Steve's team, and pretty much your whole team is here tonight, Dr. Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We're talking about big news in all kinds of ways. So Conrad, hello, welcome to the screen.
Howdy, Hannah. Good to be on YouTube.
Yes, good to be with you. So you took a lot of Dr. Steve's themes, a lot of what he talks about every day on YouTube, and turned it into a story. So what was it like to go about forming a script from what Dr. Steve just shared?
It was a lot of fun. I'm not from Pennsylvania, so I got to fly on up there from my home here in the great state of Texas and drive all over Pennsylvania with my buddy Josh. And we interviewed all sorts of patriots and went to all sorts of events and places where patriots were gathering and people were, talking about the truth and standing up against globalism. And if you watch the movie, you'll see all the people in the interviews. I'm the one not on the camera asking them all the questions. So I got to meet all these people. We had all sorts of off-camera conversations that really made me realize what was going on in Pennsylvania, and made me realize that what happened in 2016 when Pennsylvania flipped from all those Western counties from Obama to Trump, that battle that was going on against the establishment, against rhinos, against people that are shipping jobs overseas, and all sorts of other these kind of uniparty issues, that's still going on to this day. And we saw the second iteration of that battle happen in 2020 with COVID and with the election and with mandates and CRT in schools. And so interviewing all these moms that, ran for school board, or interviewing someone like Doug Mastriano, or interviewing business owners who, stood up against their local officials that were obeying Harrisburg. It was a fantastic experience to help me understand a state and to implement the ideas that Steve and I talk about, and that I've learned so much from for Steve, about the worldwide resistance to globalism and re-territorialization and deglobalization, and this idea of regions and places and countries and nations reasserting their identity and their regional autonomy in the face of, oppressive forces, whether it's at the global level, at a national level. And that's really what we're telling in this story. And we hope to see Mastriano carry it through in November. We're pretty dang confident as we're showing. I think it's all but a done deal at this point. So I think this story is going to be something that we keep being told until we win this thing.
I love it. Well, you can watch the movie now, everybody, at thereturnoftheamericanpatriot.com, and on click below in the description of where you're watching, unless you're a supporter here with us live in the Zoom chat. And if you're a supporter, make sure to put a question in that Q&A box, and we'll get to that shortly. Joshua Williams, the director of the movie, is here with us. Did an incredible job taking Dr. Steve's ideas that Conrad turned into a script and bringing it to the screen. So Josh, how did you go about approaching this story? It's very different than what you've done before.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, for one. And this was so it was a fun, exciting film to make. Like I said, it was interesting too, because like I said, it was my first time making a film that I didn't write. So I love being able to hear and and read like a lot of Conrad's ideas, what was on his mind, and also working with Steve. It was like I was able to understand what we were trying to communicate. And also being from Pennsylvania myself, growing up being a native Pennsylvania, I felt like I had to represent the film pretty well. So it wasn't hard getting into the film and, discussing with Ralph and Steve and Conrad about, what the goal was and how we wanted to communicate the film. Because like I, grown up in Philadelphia, I understand what it's like to live under democratic laws and oppression, you know. So I felt like it was my duty to work as hard as I could to communicate the message in this film and to share with everybody, you know, like the true story on like, you know, what's going on in the conservative age and what people need to be educated about and know. So, and just going around, like Conrad said, going around just interviewing so many people, you know, not just like these aren't celebrities, these are like everyday people that you would hear stories about. They were just average people who was affected by what was happening in 2020, and they wanted to get out and do something, you know, and doing that, they made themselves known to, you know, to what was, you know, to the public. And I said, same with Mastriano. Mastriano, like, got to know him personally, and him and his wife are just genuine people, and just being able to work with them and to show people who we really are, who everyone is a part of this film, was pretty exciting. So yeah, I'm just grateful to have been a part of this documentary, and for everybody to see what all of our hard work, you know, sleepless nights we put into this film. So.
Now, Josh, this movie has gotten a lot of pushback, a lot of funny negative things have been said about it. One of them being that we are white nationalists. So maybe talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so yeah, that was interesting. I've never been called a white supremacist. Actually, they call me a white supremacist for making this film. I'm just like, oh, okay. I've never been called that. I'll be called everything except that. So that was pretty interesting. And when it comes to nationalism,
you and Larry Elder now.
yeah, I guess I'm white. Like I'm from Philly, so that's pretty unusual to hear that term from me. So, but hey, you know, being black, you know, it's just being able to think for myself has always been crucial. Even like growing up, like even my dad always told me, like, don't even take my word, don't take nobody's word, find out for yourself, you know. And that's what I did. You know, I wanted to know history on like where black slavery, why it was happening, and segregation and all that. And I learned and was educated about, you know, the different political parties and the mindsets, and even just being a believer, you know, that also helped, you know, just be educated and read my Bible. So yeah, we were attacked for making this film, but hey, when you speak the truth and you're bold about it, you're going to be attacked. You know, so the Bible says, you know, if you I'm losing my words, if basically you'll be persecuted for standing out for truth, you know. So it was an interesting journey in that aspect. So
Yes. Well, you can watch the movie now, everybody who's tuning in, by clicking the link below or going to the returnoftheamericanpatriot.com. So we really encourage you to watch this movie because it's more than just a Friday night show. You can sit down, watch the latest rom-com comedy, or you could be a part of something that is really a movement. So how has this movie been positioned as a movement, and how's it different than anything else that we've had the opportunity to watch? For anyone who's here.
I'll hop in on that one. I think, like I said, this movie is, especially when you take it in the context of our premiere, if nobody knows, you know, we premiered this thing to an audience of 1,200 people in the rain in Pennsylvania, an hour away from our original venue that was attempted to be, you know, burned down and assaulted by rabid communists. But we had all those people show up, and we had Steve talk, and we had Doug talk, and we had all sorts of patriots there and people waiting outside. And like Hannah said this earlier, we had like 8 protesters show up. And when you kind of understand that, and when you're inside just watching TV all day, it's like it's a true battle. The sides are equal here. It's an equally matched fight. But when you hit the streets and when you get on the ground, you see the people on the other side are cowards. They're all masked up. They were all like, they didn't even want to talk to you. Whereas our side, you had young people, old people from all over the state, people that weren't even from Pennsylvania were there. And they were waiting outside. It was raining, and they stood inside, and the cheers were enormous, and people were cheering, and people were praising God. And it was a movement. It was something that you realize was more than just, you know, a movie that Turley Productions put together because we saw a story. You know, it was something that, you know, we tapped into something that was really being felt. And we said Mastriano almost won 50% of that primary, despite, you know, conservative commentators saying that he's unelectable. So this really is something that, you know, the mainstream doesn't quite understand yet, and you'll get a better understanding of it if you watch this movie.
Yeah, and to add on to that, like for it to be a movement, like it really is a movement because like these are like average everyday people. Like so these aren't like big mega people. These are just like people you would see at the grocery store, people who just want to have a nice barbecue with their family on the 4th of July, people who just want to sit there, watch their kids get on a school bus and go to school and come back home and learn something. These are everyday people. So, I think that's why the movement is so powerful, because I think one thing people need to realize is that the people who are at our event and are at home, that is America. That's the nation, So we can't forget about that. And like a lot of times politicians and people who are in like these big positions, leadership positions, they tend to be detached from everyday life. They're detached from, just the everyday Americans who just want to live because they're so used to this mindset, and this small group of collective politicians and people. But again, the movement is the everyday people, the everyday Americans. So, and it's the grassroots. So it's going to keep growing. And that's why, like I said, people like Doug Mastriano and Trump, that's why they're getting so much support, because people want to live,
That's right.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Well, the people who have seen this movie have had amazing things to say about it. I see a comment here from Lily who says this movie should be seen in every school. We had people that we talked to after the movie who shared that this movie needs to be seen all across America. So if you'd like to see it, you can go to thereturnoftheamericanpatriot.com. If you were one of those special people that pre-bought it, it's available now. So you can go to thereturnoftheamericanpatriot.com. I'd love to get into some questions here, if that works for you, Dr. Steve, and everybody. So if you are here in our supporter group here on Zoom, if you're watching on YouTube, you can become a supporter also by going to Dr. Steve's locals channel or thereturnoftheamericanpatriot.com. I guess this would be a question for Ralph. Will the DVD movie be available in the future? Oh, you're muted there, Ralph. There we go.
Yeah, we're open to that. We've looked at some resources to do that, but right now the best place probably for the next few weeks is going to be to see it on locals, because it's the easiest way to distribute it is the bottom line. And but yeah, eventually we would probably get some limited editions of the movie on DVD. But these days, seeing things on the internet is kind of the way it's going. I know people like to have a DVD. I probably wouldn't mind having one myself. So I would be shocked if maybe around Christmas time we have some of that kind of stuff as a Black Friday special. But yeah, we'll definitely look into doing that.
Well, I see lots of questions wondering, where do I see the movie? I want to watch the movie. I'm going to put a link here in the chat for supporters, and then it's in the description box for those of you that are watching on YouTube or so.
And on YouTube, sorry to interrupt you. And on YouTube, it's actually one of the pinned posts. It's right there. There's a link to it. So it's all over the place, and you can easily get there.
All right. Well, okay, perfect. We do have some words from Mastriano that we wanted to share with you. He was so heartbroken he couldn't join us tonight. He is on an amazing campaign. Tomorrow night he'll be with Donald Trump Jr. If you are in the area, we really encourage you to come. I don't know if you have more information about that, Ralph. I could pull it up, but
yeah, he's holding a rally out in Chambersburg, right outside of Gettysburg, with Donald Trump Jr. tomorrow. So tomorrow afternoon, it should be amazing. They're expecting a couple thousand people there. And yeah, it's crazy because he had a rally tonight too, with outside of Philadelphia. I think Rick Santorum was joining him. So they had all these people coming together, which is interesting. And but yeah, they're right now they're strategically going around South Philly and Delco and different counties, if you know that area, and just really putting pressure in that area with getting people out. So, but yeah, it's Vish called me and said, hey, Doug is just is swamped. He was hoping to be here tonight. He did come to the premiere of the movie, and I think that's what Hannah's going to show you in just a few minutes. Some comments he gave us there, and it was a real special night. We had 1,200 plus people there, and since then, many of you who are on this now have been begging us, show me the movie, and we had such a strong response, and we had to kind of sit back and like, okay, how do we handle this? And that's why we're here tonight, to show you the movie.
Absolutely. It's available now, which is so exciting. Yes.
One thing I did not share was the poll numbers. And
Oh,
I
yeah,
should
good
probably
into that.
share that before just to give everyone the extra encouragement. So this is what we were sharing with our insiders before we open it up on YouTube. But I just think it's so wonderful and encouraging. I think everyone will be excited for me to share it. So we got a couple of things. The Real Clear Politics average, the RCP average, which it's an aggregate polling. It takes all the different polls that are out there and shoves them all together and gives you a full average. As of today, RCP average, what's very accurate, RCP average, Pennsylvania, Mastriano favored to win. It has shifted from Shapiro to Mastriano as a, quote, likely pickup. So that's huge. So now Pennsylvania is in the red category. And then secondly, I just had an amazing interview with Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. If you don't know him, you got to get it. We'll have links for him. The interview will probably come out tomorrow or Saturday or something like that. He gave it was an hour long. We got really deep into the weeds of, all right, bud. I mean, he's the best pollster out there. Tell me what you're seeing for the midterms. Tell me what you're seeing. He sees the Republicans taking the Senate 52-48. It could get higher, he said, as things heat up. But right now, as he sees it, we pick up 2 seats in the Senate, 52-48, and we are on course for surpassing the highest seat total Republicans have ever had. So their threshold is 247. He thinks we're gonna blow past 250. So that's really exciting. And then, of course, Dr. Oz, he believes, will be joining us in Congress. We will limp him over the finish line, but no question he'll be traveling on the coattails of the next governor of Pennsylvania, and that's Doug Mastriano. We have an amazing trajectory and movement. Remember, if you guys are regulars with our channel, there's always a Republican lag and low in the polling in July, August, and just the first couple of weeks of September. And unfortunately, I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Every pollster out there knows it, and they don't care. They exploit that lag, that Republican lag, to try to hyper inflate the Democrats' chances. And it's just there to try to deflate us. That's the only, they know Democrats have no chance. They know that. They're just trying to minimize the damage Republicans are going to do. Rich Barris is absolutely convinced we got a red wave happening. There's nothing that's going to stop it. And enjoy this film in that light.
Dr. Steve. Again, that's the returnoftheamericanpatriot.com. A lot of our questions are about, do I have to leave this stream to go watch it? Right after this, I'll put a link and you guys can go watch it. It's available now. I do have some remarks from Senator Mastriano that I can share. I do have a couple questions here too. So we're going to go through a few more questions from supporters, and then we'll get to that if that sounds good for everyone. So Jamie M says, hi, Dr. Steve. Jamie from Florida here. I love your channel and you bring such hope in these crazy times. My biggest fear is that the liberals are taking the midterms. There's obviously a red wave, so wouldn't that push them even more to rig it? How would this be different from the 2020 election? Now, we're going to have to be careful here a little bit.
Yeah, right? Well, we're not talking about 2020 so much, but so the battle plan is what Glenn Youngkin followed in Virginia. That was so successful. It's basically the Bannon precinct strategy, where I believe Mastriano is looking. Ralph might know the number better, but I think he's looking to recruit, or is in the process of recruiting 20,000 patriots to man all the precincts all across Pennsylvania. This is again, he's getting this from the Youngkin strategy. If I recall, behind the scenes, Youngkin's people and Mastriano's people were working together to reduplicate what happened in Virginia to happen in Pennsylvania. And as you can see, like with Fetterman and so forth, the Democrats are totally clueless. They're weak. They're incredible. They've hit a wall. They've hit I should say a ceiling in terms of the support, which is around 45%. They're not polling above it. And all the undecideds out there right now have some of the lowest, give some of the lowest approval ratings to Biden. So in other words, the undecideds are just the ones who were in that lull period in July, August, September, and they're now just getting engaged, and they want to see who's standing with the president that they despise and who is going to go up and stand up against that president. So 90% of them should shift over to Mastriano. That's exactly what we saw with Glenn Youngkin. Glenn Youngkin was down 10 points in around this time in September of 2021 to Terry McAuliffe. So all of that is to say is the energy, the momentum is all going to be moving in Mastriano's direction. And that part of that momentum, it has to be make sure that we have those 20,000 patriots volunteering at the precincts, so that votes get automatically audited in terms of the chain of custody by those patriots. There's not a single vote that's counted that doesn't have a patriot's signature, as it were, there. There's not a single thing that happens that doesn't have a patriot say, yep, that worked on in real time at the moment, not 3 days later after, some shenanigans seem to happen. So that's what was so successful in Virginia. That's what should be very successful in Pennsylvania and across the country. Everyone, and again, in the red states like Georgia, I mean, they've passed some of the most stringent electoral integrity laws that we have. In Arizona, they passed some of the most strict laws. In Ohio, J.D. Vance is going to run away with that. He'll probably win by 10 points. I mean, and even Nevada has had a resurgent Republican presence. So the activity of rank and file activists in the very election process should be precisely what we need to make sure that this is a solid election.
Well, we're answering some questions, and we're going to hear some remarks from Senator Mastriano, soon to be governor, we hope. And then we will let you all watch the movie. I see.
Can I ask a question for Steve?
Please.
Yes. Steve, what's your take on Fetterman and Shapiro not willing to debate? Like, what's the strategy you think that's behind that?
Yeah, they're afraid, and it's an extension of the Biden DNC strategy to try to malign and impugn the entire Republican Party at this point. That's what they're basically trying to create a scenario where independents feel like if they go and join the Republican Party and voting with them, if somebody finds out, they're going to get persecuted too. They're trying to intimidate, basically. So we do it. It's like Mike Lindell gets his phone taken, and the very first thought I have is in my head is, so when are they going to knock down my door? So that's the effect. They don't have to knock down everyone's doors, like the IRS audits, right? They don't have to knock down everybody's doors. They just have to knock down enough to freak everybody out. So at one level, I think they're just trying to play that paradigm out. I don't think it's working at all. I think most people see Biden and even the FBI as a joke at this point. But at another level, I think they're afraid. Obviously, Fetterman's afraid because he has a hard time. I mean, if anyone slaughtered more prepositions than Biden, it would be Fetterman, that's for sure. But I think they're very concerned because they know they stand for policies that are very unpopular. And they know that woke issues split the Democrat base and unite the Republicans. And the thing that, if Oz is smart, and he seems to be at this point, he's getting at it. If Oz is smart and he does exactly what Mastriano does, he is going to be relentless and merciless when it comes to pushing woke issues. And you support this, you don't want to secure our borders, but you want all this kind of weird stuff in our classroom. We're seeing Carrie Lake do the same thing in Arizona, absolutely crushing it. So that's why I think they're very afraid of wokeism getting front and center in front of their constituents, and they know it'll split their constituents and unite the
So
Republicans.
you think they're looking at what happened with Youngkin when he had that debate with, who was it, McAuliffe? Is that,
Terry McAuliffe made Terry
and
McAuliffe
that's where
look like
Terry
an
crumbled,
absolute
right?
idiot.
Yeah,
What's that?
Okay.
Yeah. Made it Terry. Yeah, he forced Terry McAuliffe to defend the teachers' unions. He forced Terry McAuliffe to defend the board, the school boards, and every parent in Virginia flipped, and they said, "Forget you. I'm going with this guy, Youngkin." That's wokeism splits the left base, because not all leftists like wokeism. Think of Bill Maher, for example, or Piers Morgan. It splits the left, but it unites the right, meaning that the right is more likely to come out and vote against wokeism than the left is to vote for it. And this has been the winning formula for the last 2 years in all the special elections.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, I'm with what we're seeing with Mastriano. The one thing they underestimate with Mastriano, and everyone, it's something to really recognize, is he was in charge of the battlefield in Turkey with the invasion into Iraq, which never occurred. Like, he was supposed to lead that invasion. He came up with the strategy and all that. And so he's a true strategist. And I remember when I had dinner with him on the first time I met him in January of this year, with a dinner with my wife and I looked him in the eyes and I was asking, like, so how are you going to win this with such limited funding? Because he knew that he was going to be able to keep up. And he said, well, I was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and I was a strategist, and I led people in battle. And I have a huge entourage with thousands of people that are ready to jump in and lead. And that's what you're seeing on a very local level. And he's basically had this set up for 2 years, and I've seen it in motion, and it's very powerful. And I don't see how Shapiro even can compete with it. It's free too. Even the event we did with the movie. And I know the rallies this week. This is part of why they said, Ralph, can you give me a break with not coming on the premiere tonight, because we're just so overwhelmed with everything. And I was like, yeah, I get it, because the energy that goes into doing these rallies, and they have to have all these volunteers, they don't pay them. No one gets paid. Right. And how do you compete with that when people are willing to do it for free and are just passionate about it? And that's how authentic it is. That's what's so beautiful about it.
Right. Absolutely. It's organic. Yeah.
Well, tonight you can watch the movie by going to the returnoftheamericanpatriot.com. It is hosted by locals. We're so honored to have it on locals. So you'll probably have to make a free account just to get into that and see what's going on. And from there, you can watch it. So let's hop back into some of these questions. We'll get through a couple and then hear some remarks.
I'll give very quick answers from this point forward so we can move on.
No worries. This comes from Nancy Sandstrom. She says, why did the Democrats always talk about losing our democracy when what they're really after is one world government? Certainly not democracy. Yeah.
I really appreciated the Marxist, or the anti-Marxist philosopher, Olavo de Carvalho, Brazilian philosopher, just recently passed away, God rest his soul. Amazing man, amazing. He was really the precursor to Jair Bolsonaro, who became president there. And he said that this is a key tactic of all Marxists, and it is basically projection. What Marxists do is they blame you for the crimes they commit, and then immediately they don't just blame you for it, as we're seeing playing out here. I mean, this is real Marxism that's happening here. They don't just blame you, they do begin to weaponize the law against you. So they always blame you for what. Look at Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is, when asked, is the border secure? Yes, it's secure. We had to secure it after the 4 years of chaos with Trump. And you suddenly realize, so they are taught to take what they're doing and the diabolical nature of what they're doing and project it onto the Republicans So it deflects resentment away from them. And then they use that as a basis to crack down on them and thereby implement precisely what they want. So they want to get rid of democracy, obviously, right? Because globalism doesn't have a democratic bone in its body. It's a technocratic managerial class that governs the very complex processes of the systems, the political and economic protocols that make up globalism. I mean, Charlie, at the local mill, what does he know about these kind of complex things? So they despise democracy. So they want to get rid of democracy. So how do you do it? You look at the other party, you say they're the anti-democrats. They're the ones who want to destroy our republic. And then you weaponize the law, you push them out of political participation and establish a one rule government. That's how they do it. That's how they do it. They project, they take what they do, project it onto others, use that as an excuse to persecute, and thereby they realize their original intentions. That's how they do it. And so Olavo de Carvalho says he sees it all the time. He saw it all the time in Brazil. He came to the United States, lived here for a while, saw it all the time among Democrats. Democrats are always blaming everyone for what they do, use it as an excuse to punish the so-called wrongdoers. And then in the punishment itself, it's the excuse to then implement what they want.
Well, I see some questions about how to watch the movie. I want to address that real quick. Please make sure you're logged in using your account. If you've already bought the movie, you will not be able to watch it if you bought it on a different account. You got to make sure that you're logged in on that one. Members are our free people in locals. We're so thankful to have you there. Supporters have the movie as a bonus. So make sure if you want to be a supporter, you can be a supporter and watch that movie as a bonus, or you can just buy it one time and keep it forever. So make sure you're logged in to get full access to that. Otherwise, you'll just watch the preview, and that's not quite as fun. So this question comes from Joan. She says, and you did a video about this recently, Dr. Steve. How is Durham uncovering all this information? He is astounding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is astounding. It is absolutely astounding. We have another bombshell today from Miranda Devine over at the New York Post. Facebook has been sharing your user information with the FBI. We probably already knew it, but there was a whistleblower inside the FBI who came out, or inside the FBI, if I recall. That's right. Who came out and is showing the docs on that, doing exactly what Bank of America did after January 6th, sharing personal details, bank accounts and transaction patterns to the feds, even though they had no warrant and nobody was charged with anything that they were doing it with. So it's insane. It's nuts. This corruption is going literally to the core of the very system. And he's doing an excellent investigation. The scary thing is Robert Barnes and others believe he's still operating with a paradigm. The reason why he's able to get all of this information from the FBI, he's operating with the paradigm that they were duped. That's his paradigm. He's finding certain actors within, so they're finding the scapegoats, like Victor, what's his name, Danchenko, for example. They're finding certain scapegoats and they're putting all the blame on them. And then so far he's allowing the FBI to go untouched. So it's going to require the oversight committees. It's going to require Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene and a number of others, Ron Johnson in the Senate, and certainly Rand Paul and Ted Cruz to start cracking down on the administrative state, no question. But Durham is providing the evidence that I think can be then pushed to the next level.
Well, thank you for your questions. We may get into some more in just a bit, but right now I'm so excited to share with you a bit of our live premiere. It was an amazing night. Over 1,000 people were joined with us. And I want to show you this clip. And there you'll see a lot of the energy and the love for Senator Mastriano and for our movie and for Dr. Steve here. So let's watch a clip of this of Senator Doug Mastriano and his wonderful wife, Rebby, who goes with him everywhere. She is so supportive and wonderful. So I'll share this with you. Let me make sure that you can watch it correctly. All right.
That's fantastic.
You guys are just awesome. We love you too. It's hard with our crazy schedule. We miss you all. We haven't been getting out to all the areas that we would like to because Doug's been stuck in the Senate doing the budget, right? Ugh. So, but soon we're coming into your area. Thank you guys for coming out tonight and for supporting this. We really appreciate it. And honestly, you guys are all what has encouraged us as we travel across Pennsylvania, is because just like we saw on the movie, you are the ones that are the heroes. So, turning it over to the man.
Wow, thanks for being here. What a fabulous movie. Well done. Fantastic. You know, it's interesting because, you know, Dr. Turley worked at Eastern College. Rebby and I met there, Eastern University now. It's more prestige when we were there, evidently. And we actually came out remaining conservative, and so did he. It's no small miracle. But you know what's funny? Who would have known, you know, in the shutdown of March of 2020 that those lives and those Where is Wolf episodes and those rallies would have forged a statewide movement that in the midst of running against 9 candidates altogether, including me for the this is not political, it's facts, in this last gubernatorial here, that we'd see a movement across the state from Philadelphia to Erie down to Washington County and up to Wayne County and Susquehanna counties and everywhere in between. It just sends shockwaves. And we might not agree on all the issues and don't need to agree on all the issues, but we do share a common cause in the basic beliefs that each of us have value, each of us have certain God-given rights, and they should never be trampled upon, nor would they ever be trampled upon. But we saw our rights and freedom stripped away. You know, man, we appreciate your testimony, and just you want it to have the right to what goes in your body. I mean, are you kidding me that we've gone so low? So many people, so many incredible men and women have lost their jobs across this state because they just want the basic right to decide what goes in their body. And this movie captured that one important factor that's endemic of what we've been facing. We watch people like, you know, Tammy back there, I see you, medical freedom champion, you know, who was a hero going to work every day as a you know, frontline worker there and not knowing if we're going to have a Spanish flu-like plague in 2020. And then when the vaccine or the jab comes out, you better get this jab, otherwise you're going to lose your job. We go from hero to zero, all our nurses and doctors. Are you kidding me? So it was Steve, as Steve said, when when you had that face covering in your hand, you know, it was about silencing and controlling us. It really is. And I was shocked that there was a good portion of the population that was complicit in that. I was shocked that so many in the media would not ask the hard questions. You know, it's in our First Amendment. That's one of 5 of the basic freedoms we have, you know, the free press. And they stood aside and mocked us and called us names, you know, made fun of our rallies. You know, there's Mastriano, another rally, no social distancing, hardly any masks, super spreaders. I mean, yeah. I also learned liberal math too, perpetuated by many in the media. So literally, we had one of the rallies there. There was the Capitol Police in Harrisburg said, man, you had like 7,000 people. We counted them. The next day I read it in the papers, hundreds showed up at this rally. It's true. So when we had thousands, the media will say hundreds. If we have hundreds, they'll say dozens, and the complete opposite for their people. I mean, they'll have 10 people show up at an event. This happened actually in June at the Capitol. It said 10 haters showed up, and they got their message was magnified. They zoomed in so you couldn't see. It was only a handful of people. You know, for us, they'll zoom out here. You know, there's an empty section here or there, and they'll miss the fact that we have 1,200 people in the room here. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Yeah, it's true. But you know, we fearlessly and tirelessly joined together. We risked so much to stand out together. You know, as Benjamin Franklin said in 1776 in Philadelphia, when the decision was made to separate from the tyrannical king, he really hit it hard. You know, if we don't hang together, we'll hang. And so this unity that we've seen in the movement, we were at one rally on the steps, a medical freedom rally, and there was one lady sitting down. It was kind of a long rally. I know, Bonnie, you remember her. Rebbe was there with me. And she's like kind of, you know, yelling but not heckling. And she goes, you know, I normally would not be here with all you conservatives, but they're forcing me to get a jab too. And I stand in line with you because I know what you stand for is my basic freedom. And that's an amazing thing. When I was a brand new lieutenant in the United States Army, and Rebbe and I shipped over to West Germany during the Cold War, and we're serving with the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment in Nuremberg, and it was quite a time. They told Rebbe that my regiment, if the Soviet Red Army attacked, would last 45 minutes. Very heartening. So we'd brought 3 stray cats with us from her hometown in Western PA with us, and Rebbe one time asked, we would drill every year evacuation in case the Soviets came. And Rebbe had a conversation with the MPs on what you're going to do with our cats.
He said, we'll shoot them. I was like, what? Okay, new plan. We're going over the Swiss Alps. They're not that big.
But, you know, that's a small thing, but the sacrifice of our military members in this room and across this nation here to defend basic freedoms in faraway places, serving in terrible places like Afghanistan and Iraq, to defend our basic rights and freedoms. And then they come home and see that we have a certain party has gone far left. But when I was with the Cav, right before we get to the parade field in this old barracks, a caserne they called it, there was a mirror so you could check out your uniform before you go out. And there was somebody put a sticker on top, "Know your enemy," and you're looking at you're looking at yourself there. That reminds me so much of the Democrat Party today. I mean, they're their own worst enemy. They can't help themselves. They've gone so extreme. So they're aided and embedded in the media, as we saw in the movie here, by the media, of course. But it's gone too far. You know, when we have a powerful organizer working for Stacey Abrams and that coming up here to the state and leaving your party, this is indicative. They're bleeding members. They once had millions of people more registered Democrats in Pennsylvania than Republicans. Now it's down to like 400,000. And I believe, you know, soon it's going to be flipped completely red because the party's gone too far. They've gone too far. They need you to shut up. They need you to sit down and color, pay your taxes, and shut up and just comply. You know, stay home, stay calm, and stay safe. I'm like, are you kidding me? We're Pennsylvanians. We're Americans. We don't do that. And the importance of this epic movie here, and thank you once again, leadership of this church here, for your courage. You know, it's, yes. Nothing beats the multimedia. And, you know, I was feeling a little discouraged after number 2 movie theater chickened out. And I was sure they would be okay because they hosted a Republican Party this past February. I'm like, no, they're not going to chicken out. And then like a day later, nope, you're gone. So thank you for, you know, I do believe things have gone so bad in our country because so many in the church have stood aside. And we all know, and maybe some of us are guilty of this here. You know, you talk about how bad things are in the world and the country, and then you'll talk to a brother or sister, and they'll say, oh, that's God's will. You know, throw their hands up in the air and walk away. Oh, that's God's will. No, it's not. Are you kidding me? That's not his will. Maybe, that's right. Maybe that's a result of us walking away. Maybe God has called each of us, I know he has, he's called each of us for such a time as this here. And when we walk away and wash our hands and say, nope, basically that's a cop-out. I don't care. That's a cop-out. I'm going to walk. I don't care. It's not my business. It's, you know, it's going to be uncomfortable and be called names. You know, my business might suffer. You know, it's really disheartening that the left, they get away with so much. They get so much dark money from all these sources like Josh Shapiro. I'm not going politically, it's observation. $13 million. Nobody scrutinizes his list, but they scrutinize my list, and they go after those businesses to get the Republicans to chicken out and stop giving. It's so important that we have courage. In the beginning of the shutdown, I was down with Rebbe, with the Lithuanians. They're giving me an award for what I did to try to help them defend against Russian aggression with a strategic approach, nothing really fancy. And he was marveling, and Lithuanians are giant, tough people. And this is in Washington, D.C. We were invited down to the embassy down there. And they're giant men. I feel like a midget around them. They fought the Soviets for 10 years alone after World War II, and they're tough. And we were kind of talking about the shutdown. It was just the beginning of that. And he looked over at Rebbe and I goes, "You Americans need a little more courage." And so what we see here with the courage of this congregation and its church leadership here is it commendable. And this old retired Army colonel here with 30 years service around the world, I can't tell you how much it means to me that you're willing to sacrifice so much to do the right thing. Thank you. And my last thought here is, Dr. Turley, thank you for, being the intellectual side of this movement. I mean, yeah. You've been calling it for more than a decade, and you've been calling it right. I mean, when they laughed at Nigel Farage back in the 90s that he was going to get the United Kingdom out of the EU, the European Union, they laughed at him, and then look what happened, in recent memory. I mean, it's incredible. And we're seeing, this is not something for people to fear, what we're seeing here. It's a people's movement. We're a constitutional republic. And you get the last say. The decision from the Supreme Court, technically it's not even, because everything's political these days, especially on that, sensitive issue here, but technically it's not political. What did it say in the decision by the Supreme Court? The decision on Roe v. Wade will be returned to the people and the people's representatives. That's what the democracy is all about, right? Your people, you decide. You decide. So I do believe that the left, that they overplayed. They thought they could silence us, and the message is out there. Ralph and your team, thank you for having the vision to capture this moment, because in 2 years it's going to be hard to remember, and we'll remember. We're told in Joshua chapter 4, God loves history, and he tells the children of Israel before they cross the Jordan River, into the Holy Land, because when you cross over there, pile of rocks. One tribe, each tribe grabs one stone. And why do we do this? So you'll remember. And so this is a milestone for us to remember what happened, so we don't forget. And so these are, and let me just wrap it up here with a quote. Anything to add as I?
The thing that comes to my mind when Doug was saying about God's will, you think of the Israelites initially. I don't believe it was God's will that they walked in circles for 40 years, and that generation had to die there because of their perspective, right? Because what they were willing to trust God with. But the next generation, Joshua and Caleb's generation, were able to go in. But that was their report, right? They saw the giants and they said, with God's help, we got it, Yep. So there's where we need to be, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm.
Yes. This is the toughest that we've had in our lifetime. But other Americans have had it a lot worse. We could think about the rationing during the Second World War, the uncertainty, ships being sunk by Nazi U-boats off of New Jersey and New York. I mean, and then in the Gulf of Mexico as well. My mom and dad remember seeing merchant ships burning off the Jersey Shore and what have you. And the blackouts in case Nazi bombers came, the uncertainty about the Japanese hitting the West Coast after the disaster at Pearl Harbor in the Philippines and Wake Island, and on and on. But you think about 1776, the Declaration is read out loud on the 4th of July, 1776 in Philadelphia, founded by William Penn, as I mentioned before. And but that year, first year of independence, first 6 months was a dark time. We had, of course, the battle outside of Brooklyn. George Washington's army was defeated. He spent the next month and a half losing New York City, our economic center even then, retreating across New Jersey, being harassed by the British, and finding refuge on this side of Delaware and Pennsylvania. The Army is about to disband. He personally has about 2,000 men underneath his command. And New Year's, they're all going home. It's over. It's done. But Thomas Paine wrote some words that I think reflect to us today, and it's not as severe as that. I can't compare it, but just keep in mind the context, how it looked like we were done within a few months after the Declaration. And Thomas Paine said, "These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from their service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman." That's where we are in a sense in this country. So I know the fight is long and hard, but we're admonished in Scripture, grow not weary in doing good, because in due time you reap your harvest. Let's stay the course.
Thank you, sir. Put it right there.
Wonderful. He's so articulate, such a leader. Well, Conrad, Josh, Steve, Ralph, as we wrap up today, what are your hopes that people take away from watching this movie? What do you want them to watch and remember?
Oh, I hope people are encouraged and inspired with bravery and unity, and to not be afraid to just sit, not sit back and just let things happen, but you can actually get up and you make a difference in your community, in your nation. You can actually, because we are the nation. So if we don't get out and do anything, then no one else will, and we don't want our government to do it. So I think it's better that we take charge of our own nation ourselves. So yeah, I hope that inspires people to do, make a difference and do stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I really just hope that it encourages people to look. You may like watching things about politics on TV, about the president and the Senate, but what's actually more important is to go out and remember who's on your school board and learn who's your local representative and learn who your local state senator is and these kinds of things. And we want everyone who watches this movie to then be just as educated about their local area as all the people you see in the movie are about what they're doing in Pennsylvania. So I really hope that, like Josh said, you as the nation, you can really get involved and take your destiny into your own hands.
Yeah, I'll echo what they said, but let me give another point to this. Ultimately, this movie is about speaking out. And I think so much of what has happened is there's been an isolation, a loneliness that has been part of the strategy from the left to make us feel lonely. We're not connected. I mean, they locked us in our homes, right? For weeks on end. They shut down our businesses. They shut down our churches. And by God's grace, there was churches that actually, stayed open, and businesses that stayed open to fight against that. So they saw through that, tried to shut down our schools. Same thing. So all of that is about speaking up, speaking in the darkness, and ultimately recognizing your freedom comes from God, and we have it as individuals, and it is we the people. And that's what this channel is built on, that foundation of we the people. It's the nationalist populist movement that, Steve, you saw so many years ago, and we had that conversation, and I said, you need to get this on YouTube. And you started publishing and talking about your scholarship and your insights. And you were talking about this before Rush Limbaugh was talking about this. I remember even having a conversation. I was like, I don't hear Rush Limbaugh talking about this. Why isn't he? And about a year later, I remember hearing Rush Limbaugh start talking about these things. And so that reality of recognizing that we're not alone, we are the people, and recognizing the globalists hate us, and understanding it's not just this abstract political science class. It's not just some kind of cool thing on Fox News when you hear, Sean Hannity or Tucker or whoever's on there, complaining and talking about different things. And Tucker, I love, so don't take me wrong there. But the thing is that I think that's the key, is that we do have a voice, because this movie represents that, and we really see it as a symbol of being a courageous patriot. For people even to watch this as being a symbol of being a courageous patriot, because the left tried to shut this down. They actually did shut it down on 2 venues, and I went through hell to get this up and running, and so did my team. But I remember Steve, we were just like, just tell me when that movie, we can press play and it plays. That's when I know we won. Why? Why did Steve think that's when we won? Because our voice was heard. And we showed up at that church because the church was going to have courage, despite being threatened with IRS, tax, losing their tax exemption status, everything. They threw the kitchen sink at us, but we played the movie. We had courage. And those patriots showed up. We didn't know. We were having threats of Antifa was going to bus in rioters. And, but we said, no, we're going to do this. And it's the right thing to do. And when it was all said and done, like Conrad said earlier, we saw that they're cowards. And that's what you need to speak up in your own way. Every single one of you, maybe you don't need to make a film. Maybe you don't need to start a YouTube channel, but you can do something about it. So watch this film, be inspired, but behind it, be thinking about how has God gifted me? And in this moment, what can I do? Should I be a poll watcher? Should I run for office? What can I do in the next 60 days with these elections coming up in my town? Go ask someone, what can I do to help in your local town? And that to me, as the producer of this film, is my vision. If you just ask that question and then take action, and don't just like, oh, I'm just going to watch TV again or curl up in my basement. No, or get mad at what you hear on the different channels. So move forward, and take action. That's what we're all about here. And that would be a huge blessing if I just know that you're taking action that way. So that would be my encouragement to everyone.
Yeah, I would echo everything we just heard. I mean, when all said and done, what you're about to see is in real time, the dynamics we talk about all the time playing themselves out in real lives, in real situations, in real regions. And it's just an amazing embodiment of everything that we've been talking about for 6 years now on our channel. So enjoy an actual slice, an actual taste of the nationalist, populist, and traditionalist trends that we see awakening, and a massive army of patriots, most of whom have never been involved in politics before. And it's an amazing and triumphant story of ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
Well, click that link in the description or go to the returnoftheamericanpatriot.com to watch. Here's just a little clip of what you'll see.
Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, the birthplace of America. From the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall to the Appalachian Mountains and Lake Erie, Pennsylvania has always been a centerpiece and microcosm of the nation as a whole. But much like those who fought for freedom against tyrants with no connection to the land they ruled over, the fight against globalism over the past decade has proved that there can be no complacency.
Restaurants and bars must cease all dine-in activities or they face citations, fines, or license suspensions.
Here, the people are tired of being run over by the establishment. We're sick and tired of being lied to.
COVID really brought that home to a lot of people. We have never done what we did this last time, and it should have never happened.
The freedoms and truths handed down to us by our ancestors cannot be taken for granted.
Historically, we've been the guide and light of the nation. In the past century, not so much so.
Watching our constitutional rights, our freedoms and liberty being stripped away, felt like I was alone.
Once you give away freedoms like that, it's very difficult to get them back.
People didn't even recognize that the government coming in and shutting everything down for 2 weeks is a direct violation of the First Amendment.
A patriotic alternative media and grassroots have risen up. The populist revolt that made 2016 a reality is entering its next stage of resistance.
I've never run for public office before, but I became very concerned about what was going on in the state of Pennsylvania.
Decided we needed to do something. I'm not going to give up on a place that I love.
I'm a voice speaking for myself and telling you what I don't want in my body. And you gonna fire me?
Because of what we were seeing in our daughter's school, there was a lot of things being taught that we didn't approve of.
I do believe this year is a decisive year, and we get a Governor Mastriano in Pennsylvania will be that light once again, and the freedoms will be restored.
PA is coming back, and so is America.
Available now at thereturnoftheamericanpatriot.com. So thank you for joining us, everyone who's here in person or on Zoom, on YouTube, and on Rumble. It's an honor to bring this story to you. Any final words, team?
Thank you. Enjoy.
Enjoy. Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy the film. You're going to love it.
Fantastic. We'll click that link in the description.
And get ready for the next one. We're going to do another one, right? So, soon.
As you can see, Ralph has already been drinking. No.
All righty. Well, it's the returnoftheamericanpatriot.com. Log in with your locals account and you can watch it right there. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and we'll see you soon. Thank you everyone.